garnish your wage? You don't have to fear the IRS any longer if you call tax representation. We are the industry experts with negotiating with the IRS, and one of the very few that has an A rating with the Better Business Bureau. We'll contact the IRS the same day, putting a stop to bank levies and wage garnishments. Call the tax representation hotline at 800-295-1046. Call 800-295-1046 today. That's 800.
The following program is a paid presentation. The views and or opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KWAM. Welcome to the Variety Hour on The Voice, FM 107.9 and AM 990.
Listen to you move your mouth. I bet you come from way down south. Now don't tell me, let me guess, you from the town that I love best. Talk Memphis, I wish you would. Talk Memphis, you sound so good. Talk Memphis, high on the bluff. I swear I can't get enough listening to you talk that stuff. Talk Memphis, oh yeah, talk Memphis.
This is the Memphis Real Estate Hour on KWAM. And now, here's your host, Dean Harris.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Memphis Real Estate Hour. I am your host, Dean Harris. I am with CrestCore Realty over on Summer Avenue. Thank you guys for tuning in this morning. Some of you are joining us on AM 990 Memphis. Others of you are on FM 107.9. And there's a few of you on KWAM990.com streaming the show. And then we've got Facebook Live. Guys, if you haven't joined us on Facebook Live yet, feel free to tune in on the show's Facebook page, the Memphis Real Estate Hour. The Memphis Real Estate Hour, guys, will concentrate on investing in Memphis real estate, and we will focus on our residential market a little bit as well. I will have local and national vendor partners of ours on the show from time to time to share their knowledge with you on how to become a better investor in Memphis or how to become a new investor in Memphis. Remind you every single show that I am an investor, so if you have that old home that you need to sell quickly, or if you know someone that has a home that they need to sell quickly, give me a call or text message at 901-619-6170. We'll get you a cash offer on that home today. Again, Facebook Live, guys, tune in there. You can watch the shows as we do them live, or you can go and look at some of the past shows that we have done here. We post all of the videos up on the show's Facebook page, so if there's a topic that you missed, feel free to go on that Facebook page there and find out what you missed. Last week on the show, we discussed developing your network. A lot of great feedback from that. It's one of the things that a lot of investors either don't do or don't do well enough. So I got a ton of feedback from investors saying, hey, I enjoyed, listening to you and Dan talk about your network and how we grew that. One of the things I always come out of that is you are who you hang with. That's a old saying my father had, but it applies now. So you are who you hang with. Surround yourself with good people, and I encourage you to check out last week's show. Again, it's on the show's Facebook page, the Memphis Real Estate Hour. You can go and watch that yourself. Today, we're going to be talking about 4 pillars of real estate investing. Your price, my terms, or my terms and your price. So we've got 2 different segments on today. The first one we're going to do is 4 pillars of real estate. I've got the investments of the week this week. I've got 2 really good properties. These are a little bit higher end, higher rent numbers, a little bit higher price numbers, but I've got a request this past week to throw some higher end rental properties here on for our investments of the week. So I've got 2 really good ones today, and we'll get to those at the bottom of the hour. So now let's jump right into it. Dan, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Dan Butler with CrestCore Realty. I appreciate you joining me this morning, as you do just about every Tuesday.
Yeah.
So we enjoy having you on here. Let's just get right into it. Let's talk about 4 pillars of real estate. They're cash flow, equity, appreciation, and tax breaks. These are kind of the 4 pillars of real estate.
Foundation.
That's right.
Why people do it, why they choose this versus other investments.
Right.
Sure.
Let's start off with cash flow. Tell me, we hear a lot of people in our world say cash on cash return and leveraging money. Tell me a little bit about what cash flow, we all know what the term is, but what does that mean to you? What does that look like when you're looking at your investment portfolio?
I think there's a couple of different avenues that people go after. Some of them, or a lot of people put cash on cash, like total 100% financed, or excuse me, unfinanced. Use their cash from a retirement account, or I met a guy downtown this weekend that he just retired as a CEO of a company in California, and all he wanted to do is put his money to work. And couldn't wait. And he's like, I said, how much do you want to be involved? He goes, I just want you to send me the statement every month. So very passive, just wants a return. Trust the real estate market versus, he wants to go and do his hobbies and enjoys and travel because he worked hard 20 years as a CEO, and so in that respect, he's just wanting to just get a return.
Sure.
And that's what he was focused on, and not without having to put a lot of work into it and manage it, and using a property management company for that. So.
Sure. So that's cash flow. Tell me, I've heard this term, and we use it a whole lot in our daily conversations with investors. But some investors, some newer guys, and even some experienced people, tell me what cash on cash means. What is that cash on cash return? When I say that term, what does that mean? I know what if I buy a house for $100,000 and it gives me $1,200 in rent, I can figure out what my return is.
Yeah.
But what is it when you specify it and you break it down to cash on cash return?
So basically, to your point, if you bought something that, say it was $95,000 and put a couple thousand fix up, closing costs, commissions, and all that, and you're say at $100,000, and then it's to your example, say $1,000 rent, that's $12,000. So gross return is what? 12%.
That's right.
And in an area like that, we'd probably say 35% for expenses. So what is that number?
Yeah.
Third of
12 times 12 is 14,000.
So $8,000 were left over on a $100,000 investment. So if they used $100,000 cash, from whatever source they used it from, that'd be an 8% return, cash on cash.
Now, some of our investors look at this. That's right, net. Some of our guys look at this and they'll say they're going to borrow the money to buy this $100,000 house. And they're going to put 20% down, and they look at separate returns. They look at the return on the borrowed amount, and they look at the return on their cash down payment, right?
Yes. I mean, so it's the same thing. So, you that $100,000 example, you put $25,000 down, and they're going to look at what, after debt service added into that 35% expense number that we talked about, taxes, insurance, maintenance, which makes up the 35%. Then your mortgage, whether you put it on a 15-year or a 30-year note, whatever's left over is the return on the leveraged amount, on the $25,000.
That's right.
In the example we just gave, you'd probably spend $450 a month on a note, times 12, that's 48, 54, $5,500.
Somewhere in there.
So you're left with, call it $3,000 on a $25,000 investment.
It's about 12%.
About 25,000. Yeah, you're right. How'd you do that so fast?
Sick genius,
man. You're good.
Sick genius.
Yeah, it's about 12%. So see how that's where people get into the power of leverage. Is we basically increased our return 50% by leveraging it, and what they will do is go buy 4 houses
with that same
money. So instead of one house for an 8% return, they go buy 4 houses. Now they have a note, so they got debt on it, but they've increased that return to a 12% return.
I got more and more investors. I have more and more investors looking at it that way.
Yes.
Looking at it from, okay, I'm borrowing. I'm gonna, I've got $100,000. I'm gonna go buy 4 houses and put $25,000 down on all 4.
Right.
I know I'm gonna be paying. I guess your term was debt service, the interest on the borrowed amount. But what I'm really concerned with is what is my return on that $100,000. So they break it down into the cash on cash return, meaning the cash I put out, what is my return on that exact cash? Not on the whole investment, not on the borrowed amount, but if I put down that $25,000 on this house, what am I getting in return for that $25,000?
Right.
So I've got more and more guys looking at that. Tell me a little bit about leverage return, multifamily versus single family. What do you see in terms of, what do you look at to expect? Because a lot of investors are out there going, man, 8% sounds good or 13% sounds good. What do you expect? Because I know this, from selling multifamily and single family and package deals, it can range from 5 and 6%, and people are okay with that, to 15, 16, 17, 18. That's what they expect.
All right.
What do you look at when you break these down individually?
I mean, multifamily, we're seeing 5 to maybe 10 if you're in a C minus area, which also has its challenges to get to that 10%. So that's where you got to be careful. But and then the single family is probably
I like to do 11 or 12.
6 to 12, just depending on the area. So
price range and area.
And and going back to that leverage thing, I think that with prices that we're seeing now, it's really hard to make a leverage return on a 15-year note versus a 30-year. You have to put it on that on a 30-year note to get that 12% we're talking about.
Yep.
If you put it on a 15-year, you're basically a break even. So the return is almost zero to date.
Right.
Now, some people would put a fancy spreadsheet that would add in depreciation, which we're going to talk about next, appreciation, and they would create a return. But just the cash flow return, on a 15-year note could be zero in some instances when you're buying, a house that's been fixed up and rented. And
I don't want to say should be zero, but will likely be zero.
Well, likely.
I mean, if you buy it right and you're trying to shorten up your terms.
Well, let's do that. I'll do that example right quick on so $75,000 note.
Yep. This is our $100,000 house example where we put $25,000 down.
Yep, $75,000 on a 15-year note is $600 a month, $593. Okay, on a 30-year note, it's $402.
That's almost
so
a $200 swing.
Almost a $200 swing. So in that example we gave, if you're making $12,000 or netting $8,000.
Yep.
And that $593 times 12 is $7,116.
Yep.
Minus the $8,000. I mean, you're making $884.
So it is a swing.
There is a return, but $884 divided by $25,000 is 3.5%.
That's right.
But on a 30-year note, that same let's see, times 12.
It's going to be much higher.
Yeah, minus.
Listeners didn't know we were going through math today, did they?
Yeah, it's 20% return or something like that. Yeah, so it's a much.
It's completely different.
Now, as you know, my philosophy, I'm a big 15-year guy.
Yep.
I mean, I just feel like that's where you got to go, because I'm gonna make it up on the amortization schedule. I'm not trying to live off the cash flow.
That's
right. And that's where listeners need to really understand. Like, are you gonna keep your W-2? Is this a long-term play, short long-term play, or is this a long-term? Are you trying to make cash now to pay other bills?
It also depends on
change
your age.
Lifestyle.
Yeah, it depends on your age.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 40. I'm not interested in financing anything for 30 years.
Yeah, you'd be 70 years old, right?
I don't. We see that, but I'm not interested at all in 30-year financing. I've got 5 years, and 10 is really all I'd like to go on anything at this point.
Sure.
I'd like to take advantage of some of this. So, depending on how old you are out there and you're listening and you're starting, if you're 25 years old and you're wanting to get into this, and believe me, there are plenty of 25-year-olds that are getting into this.
Yeah. And
maybe the 30-year is for you.
Well, I was going to say that there is no right or wrong answer.
No, it's
your personal preference. Where are you trying to go? What are your goals? You just got to draw all that out, but you got to understand what the numbers are before you get into it.
That's right.
So
everything is specific. I mean, to you as the investor, whatever your goals are. I say this all the time, but I pride myself into turning into a chameleon for my investors. If your goal is to finance something long term and pay it off slowly and use that cash flow to live on or to do whatever you want to do with it, then that's great. Let's set your business up that way.
Right.
You and I are a little bit same thought processes. Right. Let's cut these years down. Let's pay this thing off, and let's start to get these homes, because the end goal for you and I, and especially for me, is to pay these off.
Right. Well, and I think that plays into number 2, the second pillar, which we'll get into in a second. But why our philosophy is what it is.
Well, let's jump into it. It's equity.
Man. Equity.
So let's talk about equity a little bit. I'm Dan Butler in the studio this morning with CrestCore Realty. We're talking about the 4 pillars of real estate. Cash flow is our first one. Equity, 401k, leverage return. When you think of equity, Dan, you talk about pillars of real estate. What comes to mind?
I just think every month that you're put that thing on a 15 or 30 year or 20 year, whatever that note is, you're paying something down in principal. So in our $100,000 example, $75,000 note with $25,000 down, you're paying down probably a couple $100 a month in principal. Payment one.
Oh yeah.
And that's where, the power of equity, I think it's like a snowball effect. If you got 10 houses doing that at $200 a month, that's $2,000 a month, times 12. I mean, that's a big 401k in my opinion.
How can you use that? I mean, we're going off a little bit here, but how can you use that equity? A lot of people. So in other words, congratulations, Dan. You got a lot of equity.
Right.
It's just paper, right? How can you use that equity? So if you're listening out there and you're thinking, oh, well, great, congratulations, you have a lot of equity. What are some of the things you can do with it?
Well, good question. Step back a second. That equity, seeing that equity pay down is one of the things that fueled me through the hard times, to be honest with you. Like, I've been doing this a long time, and there would be months that you're like, man, I do a ton of work, and I'm not seeing any fruits of my labor in my bank account or just in my personal time. But when you see how much equity you pay down for the month or for the year or year to date, things start to really come into place. So ramp that up 5 or 10 years later, you've got 100, in the 10 house example we just said at $2,400, that's month one.
That's right.
And it just goes $2,400. The next month's probably $2,500, $2,550. I mean, it keeps growing every month.
You're looking at $30,000 or so a year with this example.
That's right. And in 5 years, that's $150,000. So, you could take that to the bank, refinance, pull that equity out, buy 3 free and clear. That now you got some real net wealth.
That's right.
That your notes don't change. You actually keep it the same. You try to re-amortize. You either pull the equity out or use the equity for something else. It just, you've heard me say this so many times, but it gives you choices. Yeah. I love choices. Yes. And so when you pay down that equity, when you're creating that principal payment with your principal and interest payment, it just creates choices. So.
Well, and it gives you, $150,000. You can buy houses, like you said, finance something else. I mean, if you buy 3 more houses at $700 rent, that's another $2,000 a month. You're providing yourself with income that you could either pay off loans, whatever.
Right.
Choices is the key. Yep. Is the key term there.
Yeah, I mean, you create a line of credit. I didn't think about this. Buy other houses. I mean, we've done this in the past. Douglas and I are pledging it for other purchases.
Right.
If you got, between 2 houses, you got $50,000 worth of equity. A bank will actually use that as collateral for another loan to do something bigger. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, if you instead of putting 20% down, that's where it gets all creative. And That's a whole other show.
Yeah, it can be. To be 2 other shows.
Complicated, right?
One of our notes here was make money while you sleep. Tell me about that. What do you mean by making money while you sleep?
Well, if you think about collecting rent of that $1,000 a month, and you're not kind of rough math of $200 a month per house times 12 is $2,400 divided by 30 days. If you think about it that way, you're making $80 a day for just having an asset. Does that make sense?
Like, yeah.
You're not doing anything. You created the product, the opportunity. You took the leap of faith, bought that property, but that's where you hear that term. You make money while you sleep.
Yep.
And that's just your principal pay down. That's not your when it's paid off, it actually gets those numbers change dramatically. That probably turns into I don't know $150 a day. Or more.
I wouldn't mind a free $150 a day.
Yeah, that's about right. $150 a day probably after it's all paid off and you're making money while you sleep. So,
guys, we're talking about the 4 pillars of real estate this morning. I've got Dan Butler with CrestCore Realty in the studio. We're going to take a real quick break, come back, we'll pick this back up. You're listening to the Memphis Real Estate Hour on AM 990 Memphis.
You're listening to the Memphis Real Estate Hour on KWAM. We'll be right back after this.
Now, here's Mid-South weather from News Channel 3's Severe Weather Center. Brought to you by the Crescent Club, hosting the people and ideas that moved Memphis forward for nearly 30 years. Poplar and I-240. Call for a free tour at 901-684-1010.
Crisp and cool this morning, sunny and mild this afternoon. High temperatures climbing into the mid-40s. Winds out of the north will be light. Clear, near freezing overnight. South winds are back, and they'll be gusting on Wednesday, allowing high temperatures to warm to near 60 under the sunshine. Watch for rain on Thursday. The cars you're looking for at a price you can afford at CK Auto Sales on South 3rd in Memphis. They'll help you finance your next car. Call 901-789-2507. I'm News Channel 3's Todd Demers. On The Voice, FM 107.9 and AM 990.
Griffin, Clift, Everton, and Mashmeyer, PLLC, is a full-service law firm with over 50 years of experience in the Memphis area. Real estate closings have continued to be the forefront of their law practice, which include residential, commercial, and development real estate transactions, drafting and negotiation of real estate contracts and leases, business information, preparation of wills, probate, and estate planning. Their firm represents a number of builders, developers, investors, and local lending institutions, and is approved to close transactions for most local banks and mortgage companies. In addition, they offer title search, title examination services, and title insurance through several well-established title insurance companies in the Memphis area, as well as Tennessee and Mississippi. They strive to offer services in a prompt and timely fashion while advising and representing clients in a zealous and professional manner. Should their offered services be of need, please contact William N. Griffin Jr. or any of their attorneys at 901-752-1133. They can also be found online at www.gcemlaw.com or on Facebook.
Is it a good time to buy or refi? Is it a buyer's market or a seller's market? Are interest rates going sky high soon? Hi, I'm Ludi Calloway, the mortgage lady at iBank Mortgage. I tell my customers to ask questions, get answers. So join me every Monday morning at 8 and I will tell you what's going on in today's still changing mortgage world. Remember, most people think about mortgages a few times in their lives. I think about them every single day. Tune in Mondays at 8.
Investors or buyers, if you're looking for the best customer service and most competitive rates on a home loan, come to Brighton Bank. They offer a quick approval process, fast closing, and they even finance 85% of the purchase in most cases. At Brighton Bank, they work with every kind of loan: BAFHA, USDA programs, traditional conventional, financing programs, long-term fixed financial, and bridge loans made easy. When it comes to home loans, they mean business. Call them today, 901-758-1740. Picture your dream house. For you, it might be a sprawling property with mature trees and a winding driveway. Or perhaps it's something more cozy and closer to the mall. Call Sierra Pacific Mortgage today. Tell us about your dream home. We want to make it a reality. Call Sierra Pacific Mortgage at 206-930-1801 or visit spmc.com for more information. NMLS ID 1788, Equal Housing Lender.
You're listening to the Memphis Real Estate Hour on KWAM. And now, here's your host, Dean Harris.
All right, welcome back to the Memphis Real Estate Hour. Right before we left, guys, we're talking this morning about 4 pillars of real estate. We talked about cash flow, equity. We're going to move right into appreciation. But first, let me give you our investments of the week. Just about past that right up. Investments of the week, guys. Get your pen and your paper. This is free money. You just got to spend a little money to get it. 3,000 block of Wythe, W-Y-T-H-E Drive. That's in 38135, the Bartlett area. 3526 Wythe, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. This house is occupied at $1,125 a month. The list price is $95,900. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 3,000 block of Wythe Drive, W-Y-T-H-E, in Bartlett, 38135, occupied at $1,125 a month. List price is $95,900. Number 2 here is 4,000 block of Royal Palace Cove. That's in the Raleigh area, right near Wythe, actually not too far away. 4350 Royal Palace Cove. This is another 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath house. It's occupied at $995, and the seller is asking $84,900. So there's 2 higher-end ones. I got a request last week to throw a few higher-end rentals on this investment of the week platform. So you've got the 3,000 block of With Drive, 38135. Occupied at $1125, and it's listed at $95,900. And then you've got the 4,000 block of Royal Palace Cove, occupied at $995. It's a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath, and the seller's asking $84,900. You can email me at dean@crestcore.com. I'll be happy to answer any questions about those. And then you can go to the show's or our company's website, www.crestcorerealty.com, and we've got everything listed on there as well. So if you can't find it, you're not looking. All right, so back in the studio with Dan Butler, CrestCore Realty. We're talking about 4 pillars of real estate investing. We've covered cash flow and equity. Now we're headed over to appreciation. This is a question, Dan, that I get a ton from my national investors, specifically California West Coast people, because they see appreciation like crazy. Yep. They see big appreciation numbers out there. And if they haven't done any homework, specifically on Memphis, they call in and they say, well, what is your appreciation rate there on my investment properties? And it's, I don't want to say none, but it's very small.
2 to 3%.
Maybe. That's maybe on an annual basis that we'll see that. Memphis is cash flow king. Yeah. And I mean king of the whole country. We probably have in the top 5 for cash flow. But appreciation is not something that is huge here. No. We get some of it. Our retail market might see 3 to 5%. Of course, we'll have a year where it's better than that, or we'll have a stretch where it's better. But typically, we're at 3 to 5%. Our investment properties are even lower than that, in my opinion. But let's talk a little bit about appreciation. What are some of these examples that you might have, or what do you think of when you're talking to other investors about appreciation in Memphis?
Well, a couple things. I would say California, for example, they're investing over here because they're taking advantage of the appreciation, right? If their property went up a couple $100,000,
good point.
They cannot find anything else to invest in. They're taking a step backwards to go invest that money.
That's right.
Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, they're taking advantage of their situation.
They get the money out, but then if they go reinvest it, they're going to get a 2 or 3% return, or even less.
Even less.
So that's why they're looking at other markets like Memphis and St. Louis or Kansas City or Indianapolis or wherever, Birmingham. But the quick examples I think about, and this is where Father Time takes care of a lot of sins, right? We had the dip in the market. My personal house, for example, I bought it in 2003, probably worth $200,000.
Yep.
Went up to, $235, and then it dipped, back to close to 200, and then I just got it recently appraised, and it was back up to, 240 something.
Yep.
So over time, I'm still ahead, right?
Yep.
Yeah, from a $200,000 investment to 240. And then the other example that I had just recently, my apartment down in Midtown, bought it 2002, $450,000. Just got it appraised. It's coming, close to 640.
Should you sell that?
Man, that's a great question. That's a tough.
Why? Well, tell me why. I mean, if it's a tough question, why is that a tough question?
Well, I say that it's not tough for me. I'm a buy and hold guy. As you know, I don't like selling.
Right.
I like to I go back to number 2, the equity, and say, all right, well, now I got a few $100,000 in equity. What can I do with that equity? That's where my mind goes.
While keeping the
asset. Try to go ahead and finish paying it off. I can see the finish line. I've only got 4 years or less left on the note.
Yeah.
I've worked so hard on that building.
Yeah.
Trying to get it. I mean, it's stable. It's just a good asset. So, but it just, but some people would sell. And then go redeploy that capital on something else.
So there's 2 different thoughts and it's just up to you as an individual.
That's right.
You and your plan, no way.
No way.
I'm going to keep it. Use that equity to fund something else, but while keeping the asset.
Now, if you told me it was $2 million,
well, yeah. I mean,
so this afternoon, because you got, and this is why I wrote down my mentor example is a great example for us to run through, because I couldn't understand the logic of what they did until I really sat down and did the numbers with them. But
right,
you may share that example with you.
Yeah, please do.
They bought properties years ago, and say they bought it for 40, and back then they were worth 60.
How far, when you say back then?
Oh, like 15 years ago.
Yeah. So 2000, 2001.
Called 2000, 2001. Bought it. They were probably worth 40, or excuse me, in it for 40, probably worth 60. And, it was netting about, let's just call it 4,000 a year. Because it was, they were paid off. It's been 15 years. They paid them off. Well, I kept asking, why are you selling everything? Because I thought the end game was to have a bunch of houses and free and clear, and they get that what they call mailbox money, right?
Yeah, every single month your tenant's sending you a check, and if you got it paid off, that check goes to you.
Goes to you, except for some of the expenses.
Yep.
But that $40,000 initial investment, is now worth say $80,000. Okay. Well, if they leave that investment that it is, they're making $4,000 a month. Well, in their belief, they could sell it right now because the market's hot, a lot of demand. Sell it for $80,000, okay, and go redeploy that in either the stock market or loan it to other people. In their mind, they can at least get a 10% return doing something else.
Sure.
So 10% return on $80,000 is $8,000. So now they've doubled their return on that initial investment by utilizing the appreciation, in Father Time. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah.
So it was a paradigm shift for me to not just say, well, hold on this thing forever. Maybe there is a point in time where if it's worth something to, I work for Georgia Pacific, and those founders, they really believed if at some point that asset becomes more valuable to somebody else,
than it does to you.
And then you redeploy it in something else that you can get a better return.
It goes back to what you said before the break, options.
That's right.
Something that gives you options to do. I mean, you have options down the road, whether you can keep it and still keep cash flowing your $4,000 a month, sell it, redeploy that money into something else to earn you some more money.
Yep.
So that's great. Love that example, appreciation. Tax breaks, number 4 of the 4 pillars of real estate, tax breaks, depreciation, expenses related. When you think of tax breaks, what are some of the things you try to take advantage of?
Well, depreciation is your biggest one. And the quickest example to give for our listeners, just for simple math, IRS allows you to, I think they're changing this, but I think it's been, if you buy an asset for, you can depreciate it for 27 and a half years. So what does that mean? Like on say you bought a $27,500 house. It's the simplest math I could come up with.
It's $1,000
$1,000 a year, right? So $1,000 a year that you can depreciate off your taxes, and what that does for you is really helps you offset that principal pay down that you're gaining on your bank notes. If you don't have bank notes, just cash on cash, then that offsets your total cash on cash. That's why your return goes up, because you can actually take depreciation out of your the cost of doing business for that property.
I'm gonna preface all this with consult your accountant.
Yeah.
We wrote that down and highlighted it. I mean, each individual is different when it comes to this, but depreciation, tax breaks, expenses related to your business, it helps offset some of this, and make sure that you talk to your accountant.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can expense. Wise guy told me, a couple years ago, never, always report your income. That's when if you don't report your income, you go to jail. But push the limits on your what you deduct. And then
worst case you get a fine or you get pay it back.
Slapped on the hand. You pay it back. The IRS says, hey, you can't do that. But that's why I'm gonna put a big star disclaimer. So consult your accountant.
Reporting it,
that's right.
Put yourself in a lot of trouble.
Don't say that. Well, Dan said we could do this.
I
know depreciation is legal and
reference the show.
But because people expense their office, their personal house, their office. That's legit, But there's also the mindset that creates audits and stuff like that. So do you really want to spend? I got some friends that have been through IRS audits for 3 months in a row or 3 months long, and that's a long.
I'm a no audit guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I do not push those limits. All right, look, we're going to take another real quick break. We're talking about the 4 pillars of real estate. When we come back, we're going to jump into your price, my terms, or your terms, my price. Guys, you're listening to the Memphis Real Estate Hour on 107.9 The Voice.
You're listening to the Memphis Real Estate Hour on KWAM. We'll be right back after this.
Now, here's Mid-South weather from News Channel 3's Severe Weather Center. Brought to you by the CrestCore, hosting the people and ideas that moved Memphis forward for nearly 30 years. Poplar and I-240. Call for a free tour at 901-684-1010.
Crisp and cool this morning, sunny and mild this afternoon. High temperatures climbing into the mid-40s. Winds out of the north will be light. Clear, near freezing overnight. South winds are back, and they'll be gusting on Wednesday, allowing high temperatures to warm to near 60 under the sunshine. Watch for rain on Thursday. The cars you're looking for at a price you can afford at CK Auto Sales on South 3rd in Memphis. They'll help you finance your next car. Call 901-789-2507. I'm News Channel 3's Todd Demers on The Voice, FM 107.9 and AM 990.
Investors or buyers, if you're looking for the best customer service and most competitive rates on a home loan, come to Brighton Bank. They offer a quick approval process, fast closing, and they even finance 85% of the purchase in most cases. At Brighton Bank, they work with every kind of loan: BAFHA, USDA programs, traditional conventional, financing programs, long-term fixed financial, and bridge loans made easy. When it comes to home loans, they mean business. Call them today, 901-758-1740.
Griffin, Cliff, Everton, and Mashmeyer, PLLC, is a full-service law firm with over 50 years of experience in the Memphis area. Real estate closings have continued to be the forefront of their law practice, which include residential, commercial, and development real estate transactions, drafting and negotiation of real estate contracts and leases, business information, preparation of wills, probate, and estate planning. Their firm represents a number of builders, developers, investors, and local lending institutions, and is approved to close transactions for most local banks and mortgage companies. In addition, they offer title search, title examination services, and title insurance through several well-established title insurance companies in the Memphis area, as well as Tennessee and Mississippi. They strive to offer services in a prompt and timely fashion while advising and representing clients in a zealous and professional manner. Should their offered services be of need, please contact William N. Griffin Jr. or any of their attorneys at 901-752-1133. They can also be found online at www.gcemlaw.com or on Facebook.
Is it a good time to buy or refi? Is it a buyer's market or a seller's market? Are interest rates going sky high soon? Hi, I'm Ludi Calloway, the mortgage lady at iBank Mortgage. I tell my customers to ask questions, get answers. So join me every Monday morning at 8 and I will tell you what's going on in today's still changing mortgage world. Remember, most people think about mortgages a few times in their lives. I think about them every single day. Tune in Mondays at 8.
Picture your dream house. For you, it might be a sprawling property with mature trees and a winding driveway. Or perhaps it's something more cozy and closer to the mall. Call Sierra Pacific Mortgage today. Tell us about your dream home. We want to make it a reality. Call Sierra Pacific Mortgage at 206-930-1801 or visit spmc.com for more information. NMLS ID 1788, Equal Housing Lender.
You're listening to the Memphis Real Estate Hour on KWAM. And now, here's your host, Dean Harris.
All right, welcome back to the Memphis Real Estate Hour. Got Dan Butler with CrestCore Realty here in the studio this morning, and we are talking about, we just got finished discussing the 4 pillars of real estate. We're going to jump into, this is a segment here that you've used this before when you've been buying, but the term and the headline here is your price, my terms, or your terms and my price. Yeah. First thing, tell me what that means. I know what it means, but tell the listeners what this means. What do you, when you say your price, my terms, or my terms and your price, what does that mean?
Say this is probably one of my favorite things that I use day to day. I mean, I think that this is if anything that we've ever said on all these shows, if our listeners could take away, this would be one that I would say, man, I got to listen to this and try to figure out how to apply it.
Okay.
So let me just
pay attention.
Star. Yeah, pay attention.
Highlight.
Basically, we're saying, like, people want certain things and you want certain things. So you try to make it a win-win. So if you have a house and somebody wants a certain price, well, I'll give you that certain price, but I have to have the terms, and the terms would be interest rate, money down, owner finance, amortization, all those things. Those are your terms, right? That's how you're figuring out how you're going to pay for that asset. You know, if you want that price. You know, but if you want certain terms, like you want a certain amount of interest, you know, percentage interest, or you want cash only, that's what your terms are, then it's going to be my price. See what I'm saying? So, you know, you can't have both.
I'm guessing you've used this with banks.
Banks, individual sellers, all that kind of stuff, you know.
And how do you present it to them? Because I guarantee you're perking up some interest in ears right now. How do you print? You just literally, hey, all right, well, I'll give you your price, but here's my terms. Is that the way you present it?
Well, I learned this, you know, two things. One, I learned this principle from a mentor of mine, a friend of mine named Keith, a dear friend, who's over in North Carolina these days. But I also tie it into a psychologist I heard at church several years ago. You know, and he was saying, like, how, as parents, how tough we have a time getting our kids to do stuff. And his whole point was, we'll give them choices. And so it was like these light bulbs, your price, your terms, and then the psychology, it was all kind of about the same time. And he was basically saying, your kid, how many times you know, when you're with their kids, basically when they're real little, you want them to take their jacket. The moms are all worried they're going to die in the
freeze to death.
Temperature outside right now. Put your coat on.
Yeah, you're going to die,
you know,
by noon.
And they're going to die.
Yeah.
And his point was, give them a choice. Hey, son, you can carry that jacket with you, or go ahead and put it on, whichever one you want to do.
Yeah.
Right? You've taken the defensive down. You've taken the argument down. You put the power back in that person's hands.
And let them make a decision.
Or the kid's hands, and let them make a decision. Either one you're fine with. That's the whole point of this, you know, kind of this this exercise is you win either way. Like the kid, if he gets cold when you take him out and it's 20 degrees, I mean, my son wore shorts.
Yeah.
I mean, he wears, I think he was wearing shorts this morning.
Yeah.
So I wore
degrees. Shorts yesterday. So.
Were you? Yeah.
Shorts and sandals.
Yeah. Shorts and sandals. That's what got.
So
sandals.
what you're saying is that dealing with your kids is like dealing with sellers.
Nah. Nah. Yeah, I'm not trying to make the kid versus seller analogy or the bank, but it's more about just the whole concept of choices. So that's what your price, my terms, your terms, my price. That's two choices, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I'll give you an example. There's a house in Berclair.
Love that area.
I know, it's my favorite area. But the owner was, you know, he's moving, wanted $30,000. That's what he wanted. You know, the house could rent for about $650. So if you do all your numbers, you know kind of where you need to be. And so I just gave him three choices. You know, I said, hey, how about you owner finance this for $30,000, and I'll pay you 6% interest for 3 years at a 15-year amortization. You know, so if you do those numbers, you know, at 3 years, I probably paid that thing down to probably $24,000. Just for rough math. I mean, I didn't do the math before the show, but I could take that to any bank in town, and they'll refinance me out
quickly.
Because there's so much upside. Their house is probably worth 40 or more, and so their loan to average is going to be less than 60%. You know, so or right at 60%. They're going to love that loan. The other one I said, hey, I'll owner finance it. If you'll owner finance it at $27,000 at 5% for 1 year on a 15-year amortization. You know, so in that example, you know what I'm saying, I'll get your total money out quicker. In 12 months, I'll give you all your money out. You know, I just need some time to take this, because a bank, I just know that if I take a house to a bank to refinance it, it's a much easier sell than going to buy a house straight up off the street.
Extremely different things.
See what I'm saying? Yeah, taking a seasoned house that you've got rental income coming in, you've showed history for a year, it's so easy to refinance, right?
Yes.
Versus just taking to a bank, hey, will you owner finance or finance this house for me? They're going to want 20% down. You're going to have a bunch of money out of pocket. And then my third option was just, hey, how about a cash offer? I'll give you $24,000 and we'll close in 2 weeks.
I love this because what I mean, the facts are that it is choices, and I think
that was three choices.
That's
for those mathematicians out there.
There's three. So what it does though is it gives. You go back to the child psychologist. you're not playing mind games, but the
I put it
truth
back
of
on
the matter
them.
is you're putting it back on the other person.
That's right.
Whether it's the seller or the bank or whoever,
Right.
you're happy with whatever options you give them.
Right.
They feel like in their minds they can get the deal done if they'll choose one of these three things.
That's right.
And since you're fine with any three of them, you're okay as long as they're playing ball with you. Then you're okay with either one of them.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's going to depend on that person's goals. I've got certain goals, and so my goals are met on any of these three.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
I'm fine with either of these three, because I can take that $24,000 if I bought it for cash. I could go refinance that and be out a little bit of money.
That's right.
Very little compared to what I would. You know.
You've got options as well.
That's right. I got additional options on top.
Giving the bank or the seller options so you can also have options later on.
That's right.
That's right.
That's the whole point. Yeah.
Your price, my terms. Your terms, my price. I've got Dan Butler here in the studio, and we're talking about, your prices and my terms, or your terms and my price. Choices and options are what we're looking for. Give me another example. A friend of a mentor. I know you talked about this, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is my mentor that told me this terminology. And I'm gonna have the numbers off, but the whole premise was he bought his house he's going to live in, many years ago, and he offered the person $150,000 cash offer. $150,000 offer for financing it, or paying a cash offer, and then or $190,000 if you owner finance it at 0% interest. 0%.
It gives you a lot of different flexibility.
So if I take that $150,000 to kind of give you an example, and both of those are 15-year amortization. So the $190 was financed by the owner. The $150 I'm going to take it to a bank and finance it to a 15-year note. You've paid on the $150,000 house, or the offer with the bank, you're going to pay $63,000 in interest. So that's $213,000 total, all in, right?
That's right.
But the $190,000 offer owner finance at 0%. Every payment is principal.
That's right. 100%.
100% principal, every payment. So you saved $23,000 over that 15 years by giving that person wanted $190,000. That's what they wanted.
Yeah.
That was their price. So my mentor came up with, I'll do that, but I got to have it at 0% interest for the 15 years. And he did it.
Did he really?
Yeah. So they both won. The payments, I should have done the payments, but obviously the $150,000, I would think the payment would be higher because you're paying $213,000 over.
It would be higher.
15 years. So just an awesome example of your price, my terms, your terms, my price.
Let me ask you this: when you go to banks, what's their reaction to this? So in other words, let's back it up. I'm Mr. Banker. I call you. I've got a 3-house package I need to sell. I just foreclosed on somebody who was, on hard times.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, I know you're an investor. We've worked with you before. Here's the 3 houses. 2 of them are in great areas at a great price. There's one of them that is not as desirable, but I need to get rid of these things.
Yeah.
I need $120,000 for all 3.
Yeah.
How do you come back to the banker? How does that conversation start?
Well, my favorite example that I can think of is it was an 8-house package up in Raleigh, fairly new construction, and they were already taking a bath on them. But he's like, I've got to have $55,000. That's per house. Mm-hmm. His note was probably closer to 80. He just had a number in his head. He could not write those things off, say more than $20,000 a house.
Yep.
That's what they had agreed on as a bank, as a board or whatever.
Yep.
And I'm like, man, I'm more towards 35 because the rents had gone down that area. So we're $20,000 difference, right?
Man, I love that cut. Man, I'm more around like half that.
I'll divest for a second. One banker joked around with me, goes, why is it every time you bring me a house, or I bring you a house that's worth 35, and then you bring me a house to finance that's worth 60? I'm like, well, that's just part of the game, But anyway, back to the example.
Tricky conversation.
I sat back and thought about it for a second. I just handed him my spreadsheet. I literally sent him my Excel spreadsheet. Here's how I calculate cash flow and why I'm coming up with 35.
Yeah.
All right. See what you can do.
So again, you're throwing it back into
I threw it back into his court.
Options for him.
I said, look, I want you to succeed because I got to have the note right so that you're not taking these houses back for the second time.
That's right.
So that's part of the sell, right? And so he came back at $55,000 at 2.5% interest.
Which is dirt.
Which at that time interest rates were probably 6.
Yep.
So think about that. Every payment. So in a year and a half, I was back down to $35,000 just to give you quick math.
Yeah.
So I did the note. Douglas and I did the note. $55,000 at 2.5% interest, because the interest just
so cheap.
So cheap. It's almost like free money. It's almost that it's not quite 0%. It's almost, but it's almost like saying 0%.
Right.
You know. So we were down at $35,000 a year and a half, and I was fine with that because every month I'm just chunking down principal. You know. And so anyway, that was a fun example
of how you present that.
So that's 2 examples. Those are legit. We just gave 3 examples of legitimate. Your price, my terms. Your terms, my price. That we've applied over the last couple of years. And I've got umpteen others I can share with the listeners.
Well, let me ask you this one then. How does it go with? Does it go differently with homeowners? Are they more apt to do this? Do they bite back when you bring this up, or is it, how does that go when it comes to homeowners?
Like a retail?
Yeah, retail, or even, somebody coming to you saying, hey, I need to sell this house, or investors, I should say. Maybe an investor coming to you saying, hey, I need to get rid of these 3 or 4 houses. Do they look at that the same way that a bank does? Do you have the same amount of success?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I went down and met a guy at his grocery store 2 Saturdays ago and went through this same exercise. And I put the spreadsheet together. My next plan is to show him our spreadsheet. He wants this price. I know what we have to make it work, and kind of what the area will afford, what we can pay. So I'm gonna let him look at the spreadsheet, and Douglas brought up, hey, put it at 3 or 4% interest, and we can pay a little more. I'm willing to pay above what average Joe Blow is if I can get 3% money.
Because you're just
people don't think that way sometimes. That's the thinking outside the box. Like if everybody else is paying 40. But everybody's paying 5 or 6% interest, but I can get it for 45 at 3%. I bet my numbers that I just shared with you are better.
I'd be willing to bet that less than 3% of investors look at it that way.
Probably.
I would be willing to bet.
Because they're looking at the number.
They're looking at 45,000. No way, I want to pay 40.
Right.
They're not looking at it saying,
to me, there's a premium to be paid, for owner finance, premium to be paid for a lower interest rate. Look at the numbers. Just play the numbers out. That's what you got to do.
That last 2 minutes is so valuable, what we just said, because there's very few people that look at it that way, saying, hey, I'll pay your higher number, but I want a lower rate.
Yeah.
That's great.
Cool.
Dan, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Guys, we talked about 4 pillars of real estate. We talked about your price, my terms. If you guys want to catch this show, if you didn't hear the whole thing, go to the show's Facebook page, the Memphis Real Estate Hour. Thank you so much for listening this morning. We'll be back next Tuesday at 8 a.m. on the Memphis Real Estate Hour.